hey, congratulations for the Starling Girl.
Thank you.
This is a really fascinating story. So, could you tell us where the original idea came from for
Yes.
this?
Yeah, so it started with I had a relationship when I was a teenager with an older man, and didn't see myself as a victim at the time, and had a lot of agency in the relationship, and after it ended, had a lot of guilt about it, didn't want to think about it, kind of just like pushed it aside. And then years later, found myself in Oklahoma doing research for a different project and met a group of women from a patriarchal church. And learned about their beliefs, learned that they believed that it was a woman's responsibility to not lead a man into temptation. And there was a lot of shame around their desires. And my reaction at first was, very taken aback, but then the more that I thought about it, sort of an obvious statement to say now, but I just saw how much we had in common in terms of how we grew up, and our attitudes towards our bodies, and our sort of sexual shame, and seeking approval in men. Like, those are very universal experiences. And it was, this sort of like critical turning point for me, because it made me reflect back on my relationship in ways that I hadn't before, and sort of maybe realize this guilt and be like, oh, why did I have this guilt despite the fact that he was taking advantage of me? Where does that come from? And so, I wanted to tell a story looking at my experience, and then, set it in this world that sort of reflects our own world. And, I think the other thing is, like it or not, we live in a really a society influenced by conservative Christian thought. And I think I just wanted to understand that better. Sorry. I had my Ethernet propped up. Right.
Now, in a complicated love story like this, is it more of a youthful innocence or more of a sexual abuse?
Both. That's sort of like the intent of the film, right? It was very much, when I was making the film, it was about that delicate balance of wanting the audience to sort of, want what Jem wants and get wrapped up in the, this intoxication that she's feeling, and with this romance and an excitement and an opening up, while at the same time conveying that this is an inappropriate relationship. And, it's really to show for me how anybody can fall into scenarios like this. Like, Jem has agency. And if, obviously there are many instances of abuse where it's very clear cut, black and white, but there are also many instances where it's more nuanced and it's a little bit more difficult to see. And I think to truly understand abuse, we have to look at those scenarios too.
Now, you have to walk a fine line into the area of fundamentalism and God. How did you want to approach that without, insulting anyone, obviously?
Yeah, it was very important to me that this film not mock or condescend to, people in communities like these. I wanted the audience to be invested in these characters' stories, and in them as people, and emotionally, and not just watching judgmentally from afar. So it was really about, how can we bring humanity to all these people, and who love their families and who have faith. And it's not, the film's not about like blaspheming God. It's really looking at it's offering a more complex look at faith and religion, and suggesting even maybe that there are multiple ways to connect with God, and God can live in Jem's desires and her questions, and that's okay.
With yourself and the rest of the cast, how did you folks immerse yourself into this world without being a part of this world?
So for me, I spent a really long time researching, speaking to people from these communities. And then, it was very important to me that the production be surrounded by people who have experience in these communities. So we had consultants on the project, who were, really, I think, really great resource for our actors. And my producer, Cara Durrett, comes from a conservative evangelical background, and she was a really helpful barometer for me in terms of, she could very easily point to me if there was anything that felt, inauthentic. Our production designer, Molly Wartell, who's amazing, grew up conservative Southern Baptist. That's not why she got the job. She's an amazing production designer, but it was really wonderful that on top of that, she had that experience and could really, her focus on detail was so great, so specific, and just really helps to add to the authenticity. So it was just, it was about surrounding the production with people who could bring the authenticity to it, and from writing to production to post.
Most excellent. And in the end, do you what do you hope audiences could take after watching a film like this? Because I dated someone who was Pentecostal, and that was a very difficult relationship because coming from two different worlds.
Sure. I hope that people see themselves in these stories and in these characters. The film is ultimately about trying to figure out who you are in the face of all of the expectations that the world places on you, and the dangers and the freedoms that can bring. And I think that's something that anybody can relate to.
Most excellent. Well, Laurel, thank you very much for speaking to us about the Starling Girl. It's a really fascinating story. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.